Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jerrod Downey. Today on the show, we have Interlate, and we have their Chief Executive Officer, David Meldrum. We're going to be going through who they are as a company, but also talking about some of the challenges the industry is facing, where the mining industry is going. So some big topics and some detailed information interwoven with that. David, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Jerrod. Nice to be here.
And thank you for coming. You've come a long way just to be in our studio.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe you didn't come from Australia just for us. But
the weather was too nice in Sydney, so I went from 30 degrees to I think it was 4 or 5 when I hopped off the plane. So I knew I'd landed.
Well, you're getting it good though, because last week and not just rained, it Vancouver rained for about a week straight. And we had actually company coming in from the Philippines, and they just, so you're getting it good for most people.
I'm, as you know, I'm carrying my gloves with me everywhere.
Yeah, I saw that. But you've been traveling a bit. You said you went down to Peru, and we wanted to go down to that. It just didn't line up, so I was curious what that show was like.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So I've done Chile a few times before. And I've been to Expo Min in Chile before, which was, really, really enjoyed that. Peru Min was just something else.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's a new facility, right? I think.
Yeah, it's in Arequipa, which is, I think, Peru's second largest town, which is a big step down from Lima, but a beautiful city nonetheless, and beautiful weather. It was beautiful. And
I feel like you're getting a little bit bitter about the Vancouver.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I mean, you look out at the mountains and they're snow-topped and the air is clean and, and you can drink the water out of the tap. So it's
beautiful to look through a window at.
It was a bit, but Peru is incredible. Like the Peru Min is a big exhibition now, and they've run it 2 years in a row. But next ones they're doing that another 2 years before the next cycle.
I like it when events do that. Yeah.
I'd recommend anyone to go. The thing about the Peruvians I found is they're very curious, right? So they're willing to have a conversation. They're willing to invite you into their problems, to have a conversation around what their world looks like, and they're genuinely interested in whatever potential you may have to help them on their journey. And that's very different to conversations that you have in other sectors that are, or in other regions that are, I guess, a bit more mature.
Right. Do you find that in markets like Australia, Canada, it's pretty? It takes a while to sort of break, just even be people willing to even have that almost intro conversation. We experienced it when we first started doing these shows. It really took some time.
Yeah, it does, and particularly with the big guys, because you've got to find the right person.
Yeah,
and that's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
The right person at the right time. As well. Yeah,
timing's everything. Yeah. Peru is fantastic, right? There's some challenges down there, particularly with some of the social issues, and some of the political issues. But the people are wonderful, and there were like 700 exhibitors or something. I think it was it's pretty special.
Yeah, I really want to talk about Interlate, I just want to ask kind of when you go to an event like that, because we're going to talk a bit about the growth in your plans, when you sort of experience that environment and get to have those conversations that of course you're always wanting to have everywhere you go, does it sort of lock you into, here's new ways that we can communicate it, because you're just getting to have more of them and people are more receptive, kind of gets you into a zone for doing it?
Yep. I think it gives you some confidence about your approach. It also, we're about solving problems,
right?
And industry's problems are never static, right? So particularly in the environment that we're in at the moment, the phase transition we're going through in mining now with introduction of new digital solutions and autonomy and and AI and all sorts of things. There's a lot of evolution out there, and as a company you can't sit still. So the solutions that we were taking to the market when we set Interlate up in 2016 aren't relevant to what we're taking to the market now. The technology, the core capabilities that were wrapped up in those solutions are still relevant, but the way that we package them and the problem that we're solving for the market is different. It's a different problem. Same capabilities, but different problem that we're solving.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide, and Geograph, solving customer challenges through innovation and design, higher performing parts, engineered solutions, on time spare parts supply, and high quality repairs. We are heading to events across North America, Africa, and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. Orica Digital Solutions seamlessly connects customers' physical and digital worlds so they can readily understand and optimize operations at every step of the value chain, from exploration to processing. Whether deployed individually or as a whole, Orica Digital Solutions technologies deliver intelligence for open cut and underground mines to make more precise and faster decisions. With a complete, timely, and accurate picture, operations can adapt to improve safety, drive productivity, reduce costs, and environmental impacts. To learn more about Orica Digital Solutions, visit orica.com/digital solutions today. Introducing RemScan by Ziltech, the game changer for rapid hydrocarbon soil measurement. Get accurate petroleum hydrocarbon readings in under 30 seconds. No consumables, no wait time. Just scan your sample for on-the-spot result. Perfect for emergency spill response, spill delineation, excavation chasing, and bioremediation monitoring. RemScan is trusted by top industries and backed by independent verifications. Make real-time decisions without the lab wait or expense. Discover more at Ziltech.com or email them at info@ziltech.com. RemScan by Ziltech, the future of rapid soil assessment. If you're treating refractory gold or complex ores, then you need How to Leach Difficulty or Varying Feeds and Recover More. It's packed with cases and papers on Albion process leaching technology. But it also has the world's first online calculator. It's free and you'll learn what CapEx and OpEx you'll need for Albion process to treat your feed. You need Albion process to liberate your refractory locked gold. To get your pack and use the free calculator, click the link in the description below.
How do you, when you're meeting with someone and coming on a show like this, how do you sort of in 2 or 3 minutes try to encompass who Interlate is as a company?
Yeah, it's really actually really hard.
Well, we got time. You don't have to do it in 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'll give it a pitch. We've got core capability in all aspects of data science. We combine data science with subject matter expertise to give context. That's really, really important. And we develop supporting technologies that enable all that engagement with the customer. So our solutions evolve around the ability to provide context for digital applications. So what we would say is digital transformation is not a technology challenge. Right? The technology is well understood. There's very little risk in the technology these days. The risk is in the implementation. So we help customers on their digital journey. We work out where they are and with digital maturity, what their culture is, what their underlying systems are, what their ambitions are, and then we develop solutions that are a combination of all our capabilities, and we deploy them in a way that lead our customers on a journey that leaves them with a sustainable digital platform.
Yep. Do they understand? Well, I want to. So it's an interesting way that you set up being in Peru and talking to them. Do people understand their problems? A lot. Do they? Are they saying we have a specific problem, or are they saying we would like to do this, and then you realize, oh, that means that you have this problem if you're liking to do that and can't? I'm just trying to wonder how that communication starts often.
We often start by having a conversation with them around their experiences with digital transformation, and the story's normally the same. Most companies of any size are very ambitious around what they'd like to do with things like machine learning. So they see that nirvana is real-time prescriptive control, right? So that means that you've got machine learning models providing recommendations that are actually being delivered into the control system and are running the plant, for example. So it's fully automated control of the plant. Now that is extremely sophisticated. And on many layers, it's sophisticated. It's more than technology. There's a whole lot of human issues that need to be dealt with before you get there. And the truth is, some ecosystems are never suited to real-time prescriptive control. And the other point is that 80% of the value that's on the table can actually be delivered by just doing the simple things right. So just doing some simple diagnostic, descriptive analytics, and, setting the plant up to stabilize the plant, getting all the shifts to operate the same way and work within a narrow band of set points that are largely optimal. You do that, you get 80% of the value. And often that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. And going to real-time prescriptive control is not necessary, because that leap from getting there where you've got 80% to getting to 90, 95 or 100% of the value using real-time prescriptive control, that leap is enormous.
Where are the people that you're talking to that really have a demand for you for Interlate? Where are they? Are they at 70%? Where do you, or are they at 30, or is it just every?
They're all over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah. There's a lot of about 80% of digital programs fail in implementation.
You said about 80%?
Yeah. And then there's actually evidence that suggests it's a lot more than that, but let's just say 80%.
I've said it on the show many times. We've tried to add in, just in our tiny little company, some basic systems like CRMs and that. And it is very tough.
Yeah.
It's shockingly tough, because just the buy-in alone, and especially if someone's efficient in the way that they do their work, and then you're going, well, let's try this.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. Everybody knows they need it now. Where do you sort of, when you identify a pain point, how do you sort of help them along to being willing to actually look at it seriously on sometimes a quite large scale?
So the first thing we try to get our customers to do is to give us a chance to have a look at their people and their plant. Right, so go and spend some quality time on site, understand what the plant does, how it performs, what systems are in place, understand the sophistication of the people, and then understand what history they've had around these programs. Because often you approach a customer and they say, don't come and talk machine learning, don't come and talk analytics to us. We've just had X, Y, and Z through, and it's been a complete disaster. Right? We've just spent $10 million. It was a failed program, and don't come and mention machine learning to me ever again. Right? So that's where we start. And then we've got to say, well, let's come back and see what we can do with your team. So let's have a look at how we can condition your data, get yourself ready so that we can do some simple analytics and let your team in that data discover value. So we'll help them, we guide them, but it's very much them that discover the value, and it's very much them that do the reporting internally around what they've found. And so it becomes integrated into the way that they're working at a very low level of sophistication to start with, and then we take them on a journey of improving the sophistication and building the trust. They have to trust us, they have to trust the technology, and they have to trust themselves that they can change and are willing to accept it. Once you've done all that, you can move forward in increments. I describe it to people as it's like digital transformation. It's like trying to move a concrete block using an elastic band, right? So you've got a concrete block on rough ground and you're trying to pull it with an elastic band. If you pull it too hard, if you try to go too fast or introduce technology too quickly, you just break the elastic band.
Yeah,
it goes nowhere. So what you've got to do is you've got to pull hard enough, and then you've got to try and smooth the way so the block slides.
Yeah.
And that is a very well crafted and patient process that you have to go through. You don't go and drop prescriptive control in on day one.
Studson helmets use cutting-edge head protection components used previously only in extreme sports helmets, now utilized in both of Studson's Type 2 models. The SHK-1 and SHK-1 full brim models are the most innovative helmets on any job site. Offering a revolutionary combination of Coroid and twice-me technologies, this Studson full brim helmet is the first of its kind in the Type 2 category, providing you with the protection and comfort you need to get the job done. Saving lives one helmet at a time. Studson, where safety meets innovation. You can visit them at studson.com to learn more. Okay, so let's give a special thank you to one of our longest sponsors of the show, Savanaugh Equipment. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jerrod so that he can give you a little bit more info on Savanaugh Equipment.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, people see them as sponsors, so they'll ask me, kind of who they are, what they are, and just trying to understand the scope of the company. So Savanaugh Equipment is a mining supply company, and they're delivering on the whole equipment supply chain. So everything from the ore processing to underground mining, open pit, they're in hard rock and placer operations. And what they're doing is they're sourcing equipment from all over the world and then delivering it all over the world. Now, they are a Canadian company, so they're based there, but, let's say, they're selling entire ore processing plants. So there might be a plant down in Latin America, and there's a new mine that needs that plant in Africa or somewhere in the US. So they're facilitating that entire transactions. But they're also delivering, an individual conveyor or a concentrator or a pump package or just an electrical package. So it really is the whole gambit of the mining equipment supply chain.
Oh, that's great then. Well, then you definitely have to check them out. If you're looking for mining equipment, visit them at savanaequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state-of-the-art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go-to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more.
From a business development, how much of your time is spent on just trying to get that messaging right, trying to know to ask the right questions, trying to guide people at the right steps? Because if you're saying that's the big smoothing out that way, I can just imagine some of the challenges that go along with that. Is that just a huge part of even business development focus, is just fielding the different feedback and trying to find ways to sort of communicate it so that gets paved out a little bit?
We talk about building trust on site, to do the transformation, but we have to build, before we can sell anything or do any work, we've got to build the trust with the stakeholders that we're engaged with at the engagement or sales level. So we've got to, give them confidence that we know what we're talking about, that we understand their pain they're going through, but we can also see the opportunity that they have and help them.
Yeah. Have you ever, you said about, they've said you don't come to me with, what was the term?
Machine learning, yeah.
Machine learning. Because we have so much software on it. Some of it's just absolutely amazing what people can do. But it crossed my mind, I'm thinking, well, it seems like there's these companies, especially the big ones. I see some of your clients on there. Some of them are the same as our clients. They must have so many different. Well, I've used the example before. This little studio that you see here, there is probably 30 manufacturers or more, probably more than that piece all this together to make this happen.
Yeah.
This is a tiny little 10 by 10 space. It's just what it takes just to make this happen. Do you come to them sometimes when they thought they were going to be at 100% and now they're at 30, but overwhelmed with just so many options and all this data that's coming in, but they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to implement. They don't know how to onboard. I hear the conversation sometimes and I'm thinking, I just don't get it. I don't get how they're putting it all together. That might just be my lack of understanding, but it just seems like you'd run into that.
It's a real problem. I was in Santiago a few weeks back, having a conversation with a large customer down there, and they were saying, look, we can see what you can do to help us, right? But there are so many BI, business improvement programs, being run in that plant at the moment. Trying to cut through that noise that's going on and get time with the people will be almost impossible.
Yeah.
So, we've got to think of other ways that we might be able to help them.
Without getting specific, what is in maybe not that example, but what are some of the ways? Where would you start?
So normally the plant operators, someone in the plant will have an issue, right? They'll have
a specific one,
a specific issue, right?
Yeah.
A pet love or a pet hate.
Yeah.
That they do not have time to research, to analyze, and prove their point. So we will get in, and the thin edge of the wedge is to get in and work with that individual to look at the data and help prove or disprove their hypothesis. And that's a relatively easy piece of work to do. Can be very powerful in getting that initial relationship set up, and then progressing, doing more work for them.
I was going to ask. The big one is about carbon emissions. Is that something you get into? Is that a big part of our offerings?
Increasingly so.
Yeah,
increasingly so. It's and look, it's coming at the industry really hard. I don't know I think a lot of the players are, I won't say they're choosing to ignore it, but they're not. Look, the big players are certainly doing a lot of work in this space around the carbon data, about what they're doing with their emissions, how they're dealing with carbon emissions at a strategic level. So, renewables, electric trucks, making all these large decisions around capital spend that reduce their underlying emissions intensity. Right, they're doing all that, but there's not a lot of work being done in more of the detail aspects around, where am I emitting? Where in my process am I emitting CO2 or CO2 equivalents, and how can I improve that? And also, opportunities in the market now. The market is starting to actively look for low intensity production. So we've seen that now with the German car manufacturers. So they're out there now securing supply of copper, even steel, some of the battery critical minerals, low intensity supply. So low carbon intensity supplies.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So they're how it's actually mined is coming into play if they'll buy it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that, and that's only going to get bigger.
Yep.
Right. And what do you think is just on a bigger picture? What is driving that? Is that the financing behind these companies that they're demanding it? Is it public demand? Is it laws that are getting put in place? All the above.
There's it's competition, I think. So the Germans in particular see that they have an advantage in being able to produce a cleaner product than maybe some of the other manufacturers, I believe.
Yeah. Certainly if I can buy a product that I know that is just done better. Now, done better, that's a sort of, it gets into there's a lot of debate what that actually means. But in general, if I can't afford it, I would pay.
Yeah. So our belief is that if we are going to have a positive impact on reduction of climate change, we have to reduce carbon emissions. I think that every day that goes past, there's more and more people that are having a direct exposure to the impact of climate change, whether it's storms, weathers, droughts, whatever it is. And they're becoming more aware of the potential for their decisions to impact on climate change. We say, wouldn't it be great if like we have nutritional labels on food, that we have a label on products that we buy that says this is the carbon intensity. 22 kilos of carbon were emitted in production of these sneakers.
Yeah.
And you have a choice between two brands. One might be 10% dearer, but it's got 20% CO2 emissions associated with it. I can make that choice. Now, I don't see that regulation is going to reduce carbon emissions. I just don't see it. I think ultimately it's going to be the consumers that have the power to reduce carbon emissions.
When you're coming in, what is your approach? What is your value add when you're talking to these companies, when you're focusing on that side of things?
So we talk to them about Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions. It's very important, and they provide a different lens. So, if you're not familiar with it, Scope 1, use an example. If you drive a petrol car, an ICE, internal combustion engine car, your Scope 1 emissions are a result from the fuel that you burn in driving that car. If you drive an electric car, your Scope 1 emissions are zero because you're not burning anything. You drive your car. Your Scope 2 emissions, because you've charged the battery in the car, the emissions that are associated with the electricity that was generated to charge the battery. So, yep. And Scope 3 is total life of asset emissions. So it's the emissions that resulted from the production of the car, the production of the batteries, everything else that went on, and you have to amortize that over the life of the product. So each of those emissions, 1, 2, and 3, tell a different story.
Right. This is the when someone says, "Oh, it's an electric car," but it was the ore was milled this way, and then it was brought in on a ship that was this, and then blah blah.
So production of EVs is the batteries and everything are emissions heavy, right? So,
Yeah.
so without knowing the exact numbers, I can, confidently tell you that an ICE, internal combustion engine car production, will have much lower emissions than an EV.
Right.
So, with all the manufacturers very heavily transforming into EV production, they're much more sensitive to the emissions resulting from the supply of their raw materials. So if they can be supplied lithium, for example.
Oh, because the EVs are so intensive to produce. So now they've got to look down that's up the supply chain.
Yep.
To find. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And so they're looking back up the supply chain to look at miners that produce low intensity copper. Now it's an interesting challenge because the industry is confronted with deeper deposits, lower grades,
higher demand.
Higher demand. But if you've got a large copper deposit and it's 0.5% copper, then you're going to have high emissions intensity because you've got to make a lot of big rocks into little rocks to get the copper out.
Yeah.
And that is extremely energy intensive. But there are times in the operation of those assets where they run at low intensity because they have a higher grade that's going through, or they're running on renewables during day, for example. So if you use aggregated data over a month, you get a very different story around emissions intensity than you do if you're looking at high granularity emissions data.
So are you helping them sort through that data and helping them plan out? Are you getting into actually planning out how they're going to the next 5 years?
We're providing them the information that will allow them to make those strategic decisions on an informed basis.
Yeah.
And for a lot of operators, once they get this visibility over their carbon intensity profiles, it will change the way that they operate those mines.
How so? If we dig into that a little bit.
Right. So if you have the opportunity to sell to get some market arbitrage by selling a product to a customer that values your carbon intensity, your low carbon intensity, you can make decisions around the material that you put into the plant and when you put that material into the plant to maximize your low intensity output. And that changes the mine plan. That changes your scheduling. It changes a lot of things.
Where do you think? Let's go with the top. Let's say the top 10 operators. How well do they understand it as opposed to, let's say, the mid-range operators?
I think there's very few that understand this at the moment.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they see that they've got an inherent carbon intensity that's, as a result of aggregated data, 3 monthly, 6 monthly data.
Yeah.
This is our carbon intensity. It's X tons of CO2 equivalent per ton of production or kilogram production or whatever it is, and that's our business, right? The only way that we can impact that is if we convert to renewables or we electrify our diesel fleet or whatever it is.
Right. They're looking at it from an asset.
They're looking at it from a macro perspective, right? But there's a lot of subtlety in the disaggregated data that allows you to significantly improve the performance of your asset by understanding the detail.
Yeah. I was so curious because, again, it's just kind of go full circle when you talked about being in Peru and then if you're in markets like here in Canada or in Australia, and it must be a challenge just to, as you said, get those conversations going, because if they're looking at it from one way, it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So do you find those conversations are happening where you're sort of coming at it from one side, but they're not really aware of what even the problem is, because they're just looking at it wrong. They're looking at it from, we need to electrify our fleet, as opposed to we need to sort out this data over here.
I think we're ahead of the curve at the moment. That's us at Interlate.
Yeah.
So we're spending a lot of time educating customers.
Yeah.
And with the opportunity that we may be able to help them by doing some pilot work with them or whatever, and to demonstrate what the first thing we demonstrate to them is the volatility in their carbon intensity, which they have no visibility over, and they go, "Holy cow, I had no idea."
When you say volatility,
that they can be a high intensity producer in 1 hour and a low intensity producer in another.
Really?
Yeah, and the swings are enormous. enormous. And yet when you get the aggregated data, you don't see any of that. You just see a straight line.
Right. So you're actually helping them peel back this.
We're having that conversation with them, and then we can simply demonstrate it in the data.
Where is as Interlate grows, and I mean you're traveling around, and you're here in Peru, and I'm guessing pretty heavy in Australia. What is your vision? I mean, I know you're a private company. I'm not trying to get into secret sauce or anything like that, but just where do you want the company to go? Where do you see that it could go? Where do you think the market will go? Where you need to follow? That sort of big picture.
Yeah. So the challenge that we're addressing will lead us to where it leads us, and the challenge is because we're looking at production chains, right? So we can map the carbon intensity of product right through the production chain, from in the ground to in your shoes. So that will take us where it takes us, and the data, with all the cloud-based infrastructure and everything we've got these days, it doesn't matter where we are physically. We need to have access to markets on the ground in those markets. You can't sell into Peru by sitting in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So we'll need to have regional regional resources to help support those customer engagements. But we can deliver the services from anywhere.
Yeah. Where are you headquartered?
We're Brisbane.
You're in Brisbane. Yeah. I was going to ask a little bit about your background, just to sort of tie everything together. How did you get into the mining industry?
Yeah. So I started studying mechanical engineering, University of New South Wales, and went through that and just couldn't see myself. I've got a huge amount of respect for mechanical engineers, by the way, because the math is really it's really horrible. It's really horrible.
I don't know enough to know that it's horrible.
It's
so,
horrible. But then I just couldn't see myself designing gearboxes or doing those things. Whilst I've got a lot of interest in that area, I just couldn't see myself doing it. And then a very good friend of mine who was studying mining engineering took me underground, and I went, this is me, right? I kind of get it. And so I did mining engineering.
Did you come from a family that was in mining, or you just just picked a thing on the list?
Well, I'd already done mechanical, so it was it was a pretty fair commitment after that. But there's a bit of overlap, particularly in the initial years, so it wouldn't take me forever. But I just developed the passion, as most people do, for the industry. So my core technical qualification is mining. I'm a mining engineer, University of New South Wales. I then worked in operations in underground coal. And,
okay.
And I've got a first-class manager's ticket for management, statutory manager in underground coal. Actually, my first full-time job outside university was working in Collinsville in North Queensland, and it still had horses underground. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
You say about horses and Peru. My parents had a neighbor, and he had a couple Peruvian ponies, and they were kind of like scoop trams.
Right.
They were kind of like these short little stocky ponies, and apparently that's what they used underground.
Well, we had a thick seam in Collinsville, and we had full-blown Clydesdales.
For the underground mines.
Yeah, and they didn't drag coal, they took supplies in.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but it was incredible. So if you've ever been underground and you've seen a continuous miner working, right, they're a big, loud, noisy, dusty machine, and the shuttle car sits behind you, load the coal in the shuttle car goes out. Then the horses would walk down beside the continuous miner, dragging a skip full of roof bolts and everything. We were doing hand bolting in those days. Yeah. They would drag it in, and they would stand there beside the continuous miner while it cut another car of coal.
Yeah.
And then when the car left, the horse would back out over the skip that it brought in and walk back up to wherever it came from.
Unless you've been around them, you really can't understand how amazing the animals are. We growing up, we learned to ride about horses. We had family, we were rodeoing and all that sort of stuff. So we all rode horses, and we had a horse. She was half Clydesdale, so she looked like one just shrunk down, but big feet, and she ground tied, meaning that if you let go of her halter, she would just stay there. Right. But as a little kid, sometimes she would land on your foot, and you dropped it, and so you would just stand there, and and you'd push, and it would go. This would go on for a long time because she would not move. And to this day, I can't. I think eventually you had to kind of twist and get her like you were going to shoe her and kind of trick her that you were trying to shoe her, and then you'd pull your foot out.
These
it's
horses
amazing.
are smart.
They're
smart.
very smart.
They'd go into the crib camp. So they'd walk into the crib camp if you didn't tether them.
Yeah.
And they'd go in and they'd pull the lunch out of someone's bag, and they'd open the Tupperware, the plastic container, and pull the Glad wrap off.
Yeah.
Eat the sandwiches.
Yeah.
You go up to the lunch and there's Glad wrap everywhere and no food. The horse is like, wasn't me.
It's such an interesting way though. And you look to now, I mean, when we started doing these interviews, everybody would say the mining industry is behind. They're not, people, what was the phrase that everybody loved to say? First to be second. Everybody just loved to say that. And now it almost feels like what I've said is it feels like everybody said the mining industry needs to come to the table and figure out. And now it kind of feels like the mining industry is sitting at the table and governments aren't figuring it out. Everybody else is behind. The mining industry is like, bring it on. Bring on the technology. Bring on the efficiency. Have you seen that? I mean, you're literally talking about horses.
Well,
I mean, that's maybe an extreme. But how much has the industry changed?
Enormously, right? It's nothing like what it was back then, in just about every aspect. It has still got a long, long way to go. If you look what's going on in manufacturing with, Industry 4.0, fully integrated systems and automated everything and whatever, and all the zero inventory and real-time management systems and all, it's incredible, right? We don't have that in mining, right? Where the Nirvana is the fully integrated system, mining 4.0, all that rhetoric it's coming, right? There's a couple of things that need to happen, in my view. One is that we need to get a lot better around automation with our data. Right? The data at the moment, managing data at the moment is very clunky. You've got to condition it. You've got to do a lot of integration. There's all sorts of work that needs to be done on the data before you can do anything with it, where you put it into a machine learning
Big
model.
companies trying to sort out through those problems for people.
There's a lot. And we do a lot of that ourselves. And we've developed a lot of technology around automating all of that. But it's a big challenge. 80% of the work.
And different per operation as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And whatever systems are in place, whether you're pulling from Pi historians or whatever it is. 80% of the work in data science is just doing that, right? The data science work is just the cream on the top. So getting all that data sorted out. Industry has to get a lot better at that, right? And that's standardization in the way that we manage our data. It's integrated systems. It's all of that. That sets the platform for what you want to do with technology. Okay, you've got to have all that, right? It's the table stakes. So that has to happen. The other thing that needs to happen, and this is really an HR issue, is we need to get more digital natives into the workforce. Right? You're never going to teach an old guy like me who's who's been running a plant for 20 years how to work with machine learning solutions and how to deal with sophisticated automated control solutions. It's just not going to work. We've got to bring new digital natives into the workforce. It's a challenge.
Yeah,
right? It's a big challenge.
Well, especially since all the other industries are competing for that workforce as well. They're all wanting it, right?
Yeah, and look, I'm not sure what it's like in Canada, but it'd only take me a couple of questions to find out over the next few days. But in Australia, the numbers in the geosciences have dropped off considerably, and the universities don't even offer metallurgy as a course now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you've got to do a chemical engineering degree, which is great. It's another one of those very hard degrees, and then you've got to do almost a postgrad internship with one of the mining companies or one of the big consulting groups to learn the metallurgy side.
This is coming into a world where mining is just, I mean, the numbers of how much copper we'll need versus how much copper is even thought about being mined right now. Yeah, just that number alone is a staggering number.
So you look at every aspect. So do we have the resources? Well, we've probably got a lot of the resources. But
there's a reason they're looking at places like Mars.
But we have a lot of resources, right? There's a lot of copper in the ground.
Yeah.
Right? But do we have the infrastructure? No, we don't have the infrastructure. Do we have the human infrastructure? Well, that's the challenge, right? We've just been through it. How are you going to develop and operate these mines, find and exploit these deposits in an environmentally sensitive way without bringing the right people into the industry? Attracting high caliber, motivated people into the sector, and that's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, I wanted to touch on it before I let you go, is you said about the how far along other industries are, But the thing about mining is, let's say at a manufacturing plant, the waste is very minimal.
Yeah.
Whereas at a mine, you're talking about, 1% or less. I mean, it's just this tiny little micro of this massive thing that you're actually manufacturing. It's the complete reversal of every other type of manufacturing, pretty much. And I don't I mean, that's what your company is. You're trying to help companies sort through it. But that's about as big of a challenge as I think any industry has ever faced.
Yeah. So as you know, I'm part of the Creative Destruction Labs Minerals program that's been run by UBC at the moment, University of British Columbia, which has just been fantastic. So yesterday we were in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Sorry. What?
Yeah.
Sorry. What is it?
It's the Creative Destruction Labs.
Okay.
It's a program that helps innovative companies with new and evolving solutions expedite their solution development and access to market. So it provides, I'm not going to say startups, but innovative companies. Like, we're not a startup, so
Right.
but we have an innovative solution and some pretty slick tech. It provides them with the infrastructure that would be available to a business if they were in Silicon Valley.
Right. I see.
But sitting in Brisbane
Yeah.
or wherever, and a lot of Canadian companies as well. So it's to fast track all of that and potentially give access to capital and all sorts of things. So we're part of that program, and that's why I'm in Vancouver.
I see.
And yesterday they had a conference on mineral sector innovation and what's going on. Now, that issue that you raised about the amount of waste was front and centre.
Yeah.
Two big themes. One is the lack of adoption of technology because of the disregarding of the human elements. So, focus on technology, not the people. Right? High levels of failure in digital programs, which we've spoken about. So that was a theme. The other one was this issue of waste. The Indigenous people of Australia and Canada, if they killed a beast, whatever it was, they would utilise everything, right? There was no waste.
Yeah.
And yet we're putting 99.5% of material in tailing dams. And there has to be something done about that,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of research being put into new ways to extract minerals that don't disturb the ground, and all that type of technology, or using the tailings in some other way.
Yeah, well, I know your company is growing, especially you traveling around, and so I hope this is not the last time we get to have this discussion, because it's that I find the more I talk to the same people within the industry, you get to layer back and kind of follow the story. So I hope. I hope these trips you're doing, like to Vancouver, and you're getting to meet with the right people. And is it going well in Vancouver?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Is, yep.
And I hope you get some good weather as well. But thank you for coming on the show. It's really good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
We're gonna have a link to Interlate, their website, their LinkedIn. You can follow that. We're gonna have a link to David's LinkedIn as well, if he's okay with that, to connect with people, for you to connect with him. Thank you for watching, everybody. Check out their website, check out their LinkedIn, and we will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.